Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity Podcast, episode 265. Now, we have got a very special guest with us today. Actually, I'm not sure where in Scotland are you, Andy?
So I'm currently in the far frozen north of Scotland in Peterhead.
Peterhead. Is
Mhm.
that near Aberdeen, or is that north
Y-
of Aberdeen, or
Yeah, it's about 35 miles north of Aberdeen. Basically, on the map, we're like tucked right in the corner. It's like as far east as you can possibly go into the North Sea.
And there's a
ah,
power station up there, isn't there?
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
doing all this power station stuff where they're going
yeah,
to be running a line from Peterhead down to Yorkshire at Drax.
yeah. I used to be in the electricity industry, so I know all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
excellent. Well, what I'll do, I will quickly touch base with Peter, and then we're going to crack straight on with Andy, and I'll do a little intro. But how are you, Pete? You okay?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah. No, it's just funny talking about that. It takes me back. There was a question on it was on Mastermind or something. It like a few weeks ago, and it was one of the biggest biomass power station in the country or something like that. And we used to call it the Bond villain because it's called Drax and it's in Yorkshire. Yeah,
Okay.
Drax,
Yeah.
like Moonraker, isn't it? Yeah. So we
Moonraker,
used to call it.
Moonraker is Drax.
Yeah.
Roger
We used
Moore.
to affectionately call it the Bond villain when we were at work. Yeah. That
Pete
was in an
Roger.
old life. Yeah, many moons ago.
Okay. Okay. Well, we are joined today, as you've just heard, by Andy Crawford, who is as northeast Scotland as you can get. Now, Andy is on Instagram as at CrawfordOV24. If you're listening on the day of release, this podcast is going out on the 26th of September as well. Now, Andy, I've been following Andy for a long time on Instagram, and actually managed to bump into him up at the Donald Dinny Day recently, and I kind of just sort of said, "Oh, I've been, are you aware how much you get mentioned on like American podcasts and that these huge podcasts out in the States, people reference like Andy and what he does in terms of stone lifting, and you weren't really." Kind of aware of it, were you, Andy? I don't think you kind of listen to many sort of like American sort of podcasts and things, no?
No, not really. And then you said, I think it was Mark Bell had who was it, Cody on doing his sandbags, and he mentioned me, and then he shared one of my stories. I was like, what the heck's going on here? That's crazy.
Yeah, Mark Bell Power Project, definitely. And then I saw actually recently Mark Bell was over in Ireland with his wife, and he caught up with David Keown as well, Indiana Stones. So he was kind of over there something, because I've heard David mentioned on there and other podcasts as well. So yeah, so brilliant. So Andy, I mean, like, if people follow you, they'll be amazed at at what you do. If people don't, hopefully they will after this. But you are obviously now known mainly for, well, you're known for these huge feats of strength with natural stones and also huge sandbags as well, which we've had lots of people on from the sort of strongman world, and lots of them say that stones and sandbags are their kind of nemesis, their kind of weakness. A lot of people really struggle with them, but you are. Well, let's just talk a bit about your background first of all, and then we'll get into up to date in terms of what you're doing now, because you obviously didn't wake up one day and suddenly you were able to shoulder nearly a 200 kilo stone. So that's obviously been built up over time. But yeah, what's your kind of background in terms of either sport or training or exercise, or what was your pathway into kind of strength as a in general?
Yeah, so basically it was all from my dad because he was ex-military. Yeah, he was in the French Foreign Legion. At the time, he held like Legion records on assault courses and all this kind of stuff. So he obviously had that incredible like grit and mindset, which he then passed on to me. So like from yay high, like from a young age, I was out running in the middle of winter with him and with the dogs and all the rest of it. So I suppose that's like the baseline of where it kind of started. It's always been something in my life, either running or watching my dad doing weights, and then like try and bench press and whatever he was doing, I would just try and copy. And it was always I want to be as strong as my dad one day. I want to have as big biceps as my dad one day. That type of stuff.
Okay, because I remember watching. You mentioned the French Foreign Legion. I think you're a bit younger than Pete and I, but I remember watching the film, the Jean-Claude Van Damme film called A.W.O.L back in the day. Do you remember that? Pete?
A.W.O.L. Oh God, yeah. I forgot
Classic.
about. I was wondering which one you were going to mention. Yeah.
Did you ever watch that, Andy?
Yeah, well, he's got A.W.O.L, and then he's actually got one called, I think it's called Legion or something like that, where he's actually in the Foreign Legion. So yeah.
Yeah, that was like because he obviously went AWOL from the French Foreign Legion to avenge. I can't remember, like someone got killed and he had his brother or something. He had to go, but yeah.
And then he had to do the splits at one point for some reason.
Yeah.
And of course, start like underground cage fighting or whatever it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yes.
usual.
So your dad was a very fit, strong kind of guy and an early role model, obviously for you. And then did you? So obviously you saw him training regularly. You got involved in that as much as you can. And then what kind of was the first kind of thing that you maybe not took seriously, but did you kind of focus on something at a certain point where maybe I don't know you went into barbell training more, or you got more into running, or you got more? What was kind of which path did you take?
Yeah, so the first thing was I showed a little bit of talent for athletics when I was at school. So I suppose that was the first thing. I had a decent javelin throw, had a decent like 100 meters time, was winning like inter-school championships and things like that. And that was it really. And then from there, just dabbling in barbell and sort of calisthenics kind of stuff, push-ups and pull-ups with my dad, and then got into extreme sports when I was a kid. So it was all the usual, whatever the fad was. It was skateboarding, it was rollerblading, it was did a bit of snowboarding and all that kind of thing. So I was always kind of active with it.
Yeah. And because it's funny, isn't it? Because a lot of people that we've spoke to, and not a lot, but a number of people, like we had Lucy Underdown on, who was she was a thrower. She was kind of like discus and shot put, I think. We had Andrea Thompson on recently, who was also good at throwing in school. So it's these kind of explosive sort of power sort of sports, which obviously then lead and transition into this kind of strength, this kind of big sort of strength that you have. But I mean, I was watching some of your videos. I was showing a member the other day at the gym, and some of these lifts that you do, like especially with that, I think it's 192 kilo stone, like a long obelisk type stone. It takes a long, it's not a quick lift. It's not like an Olympic barbell snatch, which is like 3 seconds and it's done. Some of these things you're literally, especially the sandbags as well, you're kind of fighting with them, aren't you? And you're maneuvering, and it could be like a 30 45 second lift, can't it? So it's a huge thing. I mean, when did you first start, when did you first lay your hand on stones? I mean, did you start with Atlas stones, then move to natural stones, or what was the kind of progression for you?
So it was training for the Dinnie stones. So I had seen, I think it's Lee Holland Keane had come over and lifted them and had been like the first woman since Jean-Claude to lift them. And I saw that in one of the local newspapers, and I was like, oh, cool, where's that? And it was just down the road. And I was like, well, I'll train for that. Unfortunately, at that time, my grandmother had been diagnosed with cancer. So I said, well, I'll raise money for cancer research, so get sponsored to kind of do it. So I got the sponsorship, and then it gave me like a kind of goal reason to do it. And I was just like, yeah, that'd be great. It'd be great to be like within the first 150 people to lift the Dinnie stones. And that's kind of where I started.
And how long did the training for the Dinnies take you? Because we've had people on the podcast who have, it's taken them years. We've had people who kind of more like months, and some, So what was the process like for you?
So far too long because of COVID. Because I was supposed to be round about 155th or something like that, and then pretty much when lockdown hit was when I was supposed to do my lift.
Yeah.
So it should have taken about, I think it was maybe about a year, just over a year, to train for it, and I was ready for it, and that was fine. And then we got locked down, and then it didn't open up for another year or so. So instead of it taking the year, it took about 2 years until I actually got my hands on them. So I completely overtrained for them because of that, because I was still like dabbling away. Obviously, the gym equipment was so sparse at the time, and I had what I had in the garage, and just was plugging away doing Dinnie lifts, some basic stone lifts, things like that. Nothing major, plate lifts, and ended up way overtraining because my goal was to just hold the Dinnies for 5 seconds. That was the goal, but I ended up going all the way up to 400 kilos with straps. Didn't do it with hook, and then I got up to about 360 with hook. So,
and when you did it at I take it you did it at Potarch at the outside the cafe there. What number did you end up being in the end?
yeah, so I ended up, because of lockdown and because of training being inconsistent and on and off, and I'm like, if I keep banging away at this, I'm going to end up with like injuries, and my knee started to kind of twinge a little bit because it was just the repeated movement over and over again. Because at the time, I didn't even have a barbell or anything, didn't have any of my sandbags at the time, so I was just repeatedly doing the dinnies over and over again. I started to get this twinge in my knee, so I kind of went on and off, and didn't really structure it very well. And so when I eventually got my date, I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for it because my training's been so inconsistent. So I said, right, I'm going to give myself 8 weeks, an extra 8 weeks, and just like properly strip it all back, taper properly, peak for it. So I ended up being 174th.
Wow. Because I think now are they like in the 400s now or something? Or
I think so. Last time I looked, it was in the high 300s. So it must be touching 400 by now.
Yeah. I was going to say. And you, like you said, you didn't have a barbell. You were literally mainly training with the Dinny pins, were you, with the rings on them? Yeah, with plates and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a set made like way back, and it was a company called Killer Strength who don't exist anymore. And I got them to make me a set. That was before you could get them from like Cerberus and all the rest of it. And that was basically all I had in the garage at the time.
And do you exclude? Sorry, go on, Pete.
I was just going to say this is brilliant because like we're just talking about the Dinny Stones, right? And you're like, oh yeah, I didn't know what they were, but they're just down the road. We've been talking about them for a while now. We've had Stevie Shanks on, and like loads of people who've lifted them.
Like Chloe Brennan, didn't we? As
well,
well.
We were at the gathering. So the way we talk about it now is just like everyone knows what they are, and there's only 400 and something odd people who've lifted them. But it's one of those things like once you know about them, and once I'm saying not necessarily for me, but once you know about them, once you realize that like people have lifted them, and then more people are lifting them, it's like it's quite accessible then, isn't it? Even though it's a massive feat of strength, it's really accessible. Because what was the name of the guy? Was it Enzo who lifted them when he was like 64?
That's
and
right,
he's been strength. He's like really skinny, isn't he? He's like really skinny, and he's now 70, and he was after it, and he's like, but he's been training his whole life and stuff like that. So God knows what number he was when he lifted them. He would have been one of the earlier ones, but it's like, it's just great. It seems to have got this momentum, and we just still assume everyone knows what they are, but nobody does. Yeah. And then the more and more people who do, it'll become huge. So I think, like you say, it's getting into like Cerberus are now producing the replica rings, and people are buying them all over the world and stuff. It's brilliant.
So that was your introduction to sort of stone lifting, was the Dinnies, yeah. And do you remember how you heard about them? Because this was obviously maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, like you say, because it was pre sort of like lockdowns and everything. So was that? I don't think they brought out the Stoneland documentary then, had they? Rogue and stuff like that. Was that? So how did you hear about them back then?
Yeah, so that would maybe have just about dropped at that point, but maybe I hadn't seen it. But it was the newspaper article of the Australian nurse, in one of the local newspapers, that I saw, and I was just like, well, great. And then the same local newspaper then did the article about me, to sort of say there was a local teacher. He's not even a PE teacher; he's a geography teacher, and he's going to lift these really, really heavy stones for a good cause. So that was it.
Is that your day job, a geography teacher?
Yeah, well, it was. So I've changed slightly recently. So I'm 50-50. Half the time I teach lecture at the University of Aberdeen, and half the time I'm in a local high school. I'm no longer doing like social subjects. I'm doing like support teaching, like for special needs.
Okay. What, across both in the school and the university? Or
yeah, so it's quite. We've got a 50-50 job, 0.5. So half the week in the uni and half the week in a school.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, you just wouldn't have, because what do your students and people you work with think? Do they know about this kind of alter ego, this sort of like other life that you've got outside of work?
Yeah, they love it, and it's the fact it's the conundrum, because it's like, but why aren't you a PE teacher? They can't get their head around this. It's like, yeah, I would understand if you're a PE teacher, fine. But you're a geography teacher, you're supposed to be running about in like a tweed jacket with leather patches, like what's going on, like reading dusty old maps and things like that. Like it fascinates them, I think.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And yeah, so you mentioned as well, just a touch again, because you mentioned training at home in the garage. Now, most anyone who does follow you at the moment, obviously we see you out and about at different places lifting natural stones, but it looks like most of your training is done at home in the garage. Is that right? Is that where you sort of predominantly train?
Yeah, that's right. Back when I first got training with my training buddy, Michael Brown, it was a lot more at his because he had a lot more of the kit. So it was the mouldy shed, hence the the t-shirt. I don't know if you can see it, but
Yeah, I
just
can
a,
see. Oh,
just
the
a,
mouldy
yeah,
shed crew.
mouldy shed crew. It became a bit of a meme. So
Yeah.
basically, it's this horrendous asbestos roofed ancient barn that's was used for housing like livestock that he made into a gym, basically, and that's where we started. But then as I get more and more into it, so I've got more and more of my own kit, and then most of my training's now in the garage.
Yeah. And where do you, because the stones obviously that you've got at home, I say that massive 192 kilo sort of obelisk stone, which does have what's it called? The name of it?
It's been affectionately named the Invernetti stone because it's near an area called Invernetty in Peterhead.
Okay. So do you have that at home now? Do
Yeah.
you, yeah, that's at home. And I mean, I don't know if it was your wife or your girlfriend or partner who I met at the Dinnies who was with you there at the gathering, was it?
Yeah, that's my girlfriend, yeah.
Yeah, your girlfriend. I mean, what does she lift and stuff as well, or what does she make of it? Because it was quite funny. You were walking around the dinner day, and you were like obviously like a bit of a celebrity. People were like coming up and talking to you and taking photos, and you were training, you were doing that sort of stone off with Luke Stoltman
Yeah.
and things. What does she make of it all?
Well, I mean, just touching on what you said there, that was the most bizarre visit because that's the first time I've been to the gathering, been what 3 or 4 years now, and that's the first time I had that kind of Z-list celebrity status, and it was a bit weird. It was like this is weird because at first I thought people were taking the pee. I was like, oh, can I get a photo with you? You're my favorite stone lifting celebrity, and I'm like, come on, mate. But no, they were being genuinely serious, and I was like, that's lovely. But yeah, to answer your question, she loves it. It was something we kind of got into the touring round the stones. Like once I'd done the Dinnies, it was something we kind of got into as like a sort of post lockdown. Let's do something new. Let's go and visit these stones that are all around Scotland. And she loves it because she gets to travel, gets to see all the beautiful country, and then it's traveling with a purpose. It's great because I get to do the lifting, so it's a win-win.
Yeah. So I suppose I want to touch on. We don't often talk about it on the podcast. Obviously, we have people on the podcast, and some things you don't talk about, and just if people don't bring it up, I don't really bring it up. But you are, you're like you. I think before we just press record, you said you're kind of like, how tall are you? You're around 6 foot, aren't you, or just shade under maybe? I don't know.
Just missed out on 6 foot, so like 5'11" something, like just
Yeah,
under
but
six
it's about
foot.
the same height as me, I think, from when I was stood next to you, and you're around a sort of 110, 111 kilos, something like that. And you are like as well. This is what we need to, you're a lifetime natural sort of lifter. You don't take any drugs or anything like that, or steroids and things like that. So, but you are one of the strongest people in the world at lifting these kind of odd objects, these stones and these sandbags that we see people who are, maybe 6'8" and 50 kilos heavier than you can't do what you do with this. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about how you've developed the ability to do that, because I presume you couldn't just walk up and pick up a 150 kilo stone when you first tried. You may have been able to, but I think you probably developed the strength for that and the skill and the almost like a lot of people talk about lifting the natural stones when we've had David Keown on a couple of times, Indiana Stones, the puzzle of how you lift it and the angle and where you grab it and then when you transition to the different stages of the lift. So yeah, how did you develop that? I mean, is that just something you've done over time?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, started out as I say post lifting the Dinnies, sort of would have been end of 2021,
Hmm.
and then I started touring around lifting stones. Met Michael, we placed a stone 125 kilos nearby here, and then we just lifted together. And at the time, you know, Michael was, if he was better than me, he got the lift of the 125 kilos to shoulder. I got it to shoulder, but it fell off, didn't get the hand away, didn't get it balanced. And I suppose the thing is that I've just remained completely consistent and just tunnel vision. And it's like, I always joke to people because people are like, oh, are you so good at this? Oh my God, oh, this and that. And I'm like, oh, I'm a one-trick pony, you know. I'd go to comps if there's a natural stone to shoulder or a natural stone to barrel event. Yeah, I'd probably like be top 3, but I'd probably zero everything else. You know, like overhead log, you name it. You know, I'd do okay in deadlift. I'm alright at deadlift, but any other event I'd zero. So it's everything in perspective. It's just because I've specified in something for now 4 years, thousands and thousands and thousands of reps, just drilling in that that type of training. And outside of Basque country, which is where stone to shoulder is just absolutely massive, so the Basque stone lifters, and from what I can see, maybe I'm just not good at research and I don't know, but they're quite secretive. Like, you can't easily go onto YouTube and go Basque stone training program. It just doesn't exist as far as I know. So outside of Basque country, there's very few people who are just doing exclusively stone to shoulder. I think I must be like one of the only ones that just does stone to shoulder, because there's no stone to shoulder events or competitions like there are in Basque country. So it's like, what the heck's this guy training for, you know? So I've been drilling it in, and then I've been working it out for myself as I go. So it's like, okay, where am I weakest? Well, everyone's weakest when the stone is above here. And that's simply because we're also used to lifting stones to chest. We're used to lifting Atlas stones onto platforms. But as soon as it gets past this height, even as you said, you're massive guys. You go back and watch the Arnolds. Amazing power from Thor, from Hooper, everybody up to here. And then it all gets a little bit shaky because it's gone past chest height. So that's why I've invented my own little, well, the Basque guys are probably doing it, but I don't know. But I've invented my own little sort of drills and ways to train that, which is just get as much exposure with a stone above that height as you possibly can. So instead of just shouldering the stone and dropping it like you see most people do, I would take it to shoulder, lower it back down to chest, pause for 30 seconds. So as I'm breathing with 130 kilo stone in my chest, and then pop it back up to shoulder. Or something I haven't seen many people do is I'll take my hands off and balance it on my chest, things like that, just to get that time under tension in that upper chest / shoulder position.
Because do you call that like a limbo lift, don't you? A limbo?
Yeah, so that's what Luke saw. That's how I kind of got into it with Luke, because Luke was like, what the heck's this guy doing? You know, because I've got this stone, 130, 140 kilo stone on my shoulder. I've actually done it all the way up to 175. And it's the idea, you have it on your chest, you lean back far enough so you can balance it on your chest. And then you take your hands both off and you balance it there. And then you put your hands back on and then shoulder it.
Yeah. So had you spent much time with Luke before the Dinny Day this year? Because you had this kind of, it was quite funny. I was chatting to you, and then Luke came over, and then just right in front of me, you just started doing this, like you were each doing like, right, let's do the stone to shoulder, let's do the stone to shoulder, now let's do the limbo, and then he ended up pressing it, didn't he, overhead?
That's right. Yeah.
But had you spent much time with him before, or was no?
No, it was just like usual as most people do. Oh, there's the Stoltman's, get a photo. That was it really up until that point, you know. And then he followed me. He had followed me like a few weeks ago from the gathering. He'd followed me on Instagram, and he sent a message saying, that's amazing, love what you're doing, that's amazing, that Limbo stuff. I see you've placed stones around Aberdeenshire. And I was like, yeah. He's like, I'd love to come down and lift them, maybe get Tom down as well. Looks really cool. And he just suddenly took an interest in natural stones from that point, really.
Yeah. Oh wow, because it was almost as if you were like old pals, you know, like you'd been doing it, you know. Okay.
It was the weird surreal moment where you see my face as a photo of it, where he like gets down on one knee and takes my hand. He's just like not worthy, because he's just like amazed that I'm doing these feats of strength at my body weight. He was just like, that's amazing. I just don't know how you're doing it.
I like the healthy competition though, of like, you know, you balance it on there, and he's like, well, I can't do that, so I'll press it above my head, shall I?
Yeah.
So everybody wins.
Oh no, that's fantastic. And you mentioned, so when you were younger, you know, when you were doing more athletics, I suppose, more sort of like running and throwing, you mentioned as well. I presume you weren't as sort of as heavy. I mean, because you said before we came on, you said I'm just a little guy, you know, but you are sort of 6 foot and 111 kilos. You're not a little guy compared to the average, you know, little guy like myself or Pete, I suppose.
Yeah, just just in strong man,
But
like
in that world, yeah, I know what you
yeah.
mean. In the strongman world, where you're, standing next to the Stoltmans and and you've got like your Eddie Halls and all those kind of people. Well, like most of them really are kind of probably like 6'3" to 6'6", and probably 140 plus kilos. But have you put on a certain amount of size as you've got stronger and as you've been lifting these, as the weights you've been lifting have been getting heavier, have you got bigger, alongside them as well?
Yeah, I found that I've had to steadily put on a bit of mass as
Mm.
the weights have got heavier. And I've just sort of, as the weights have increased, I've just increased my calories
Mm.
alongside that. But I always used to hover between about 105 and 110. And now I'm sort of in that next bracket of 110 to 115. And I do feel like a little bit heavier, but I'm feeling it a little bit more now. And it's that sort of double-edged sword because it's addictive. And I've got like a couple of goals that I still want to kind of tick off that it would benefit from the extra body weight. And it's like, when do I put a stop to this? When do I maybe cut back just a little bit? It's the unanswerable question.
So
Yeah, it's
how do you know about like all of that? How do you know about like what to eat and how much to put on? And because are you like, have you just done it by trial and error? Do you know about training? Has it been just as you grow up, you picked it up off your dad and stuff like that?
So basically, that was born out of my dark period where I left school, I went to university, and I just sat in my behind for most of it. I didn't do much. I did like sort of bro bicep curls. I kept doing like push-ups and things like that, but it was absolutely minimal for about 5 years. Because I was so focused on my studies, so focused on becoming a teacher, just kind of let everything out with the weight training and so on and the running. I just let it go. And then once I became a teacher and I, secured my qualification, secured my spot, and got my full-time job, I was like, right, there's something wrong here. I need to sort this out. So I got back into running, back into like calisthenics, doing push-ups and lots of high volume stuff. And then once I've been doing that for a while, because my goal was to run a mile in under 5 minutes, and I just missed doing that. It's one of the only goals that I haven't ticked off, and my knees just kind of gave up.
no, that's incredibly. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully the listeners realize that is incredibly fast. I mean, generally for the most people, a mile under 6 minutes is really good going. That is running bloody fast. So a mile under 5 is elite, kind of like elite running, isn't it?
Yeah, so I trained for that, and then off the back of that, I did a couple of half marathons off my own back, and my goal was just to do it in under an hour 40. Managed to do that. Was there any other running goals? I think those were the two main ones. Funny story though, and I've never run a 10K, so I've run a sub. I've run a sub 1 hour 40 half marathon. I think it was like 5 minutes 10-ish on the mile,
The 1 mile.
and then I've done a sub 18-minute 5K. I've never run a 10K.
Wow, so that is really fast. I mean, sub 18 minutes 5K as well is really fast. So when you were running those, what kind of body weight would you have been at that stage?
Yeah, stripped all the way back down. And my lightest during that period, so that was around about 2013, 2014, 2015. I was down under 80 kilo at the time.
It's still not tiny. Do you know what I mean? For to be running that fast for because I know friends who can run sort of maybe 17, 18 minute 5Ks, but they're like under 70 kilos. They're more like the high 60s. So that it's still still not a small small guy running that fast. That's incredible. Yeah. Wow.
You need to get into park run just briefly, just to win it, and then get back into stone lifting again.
And my mate, that's what he wants to do. He's like so many different goals banging about. He's like, wants to do a 300 kilo deadlift, Michael. Then he wants to go and enter a park run. So it's a bit crazy.
This is. I was going to say, when James asked the question of how did you get really good at stone lifting, how did you, like, for a guy your size who's not as big as all the other big guys, how did you get stronger pound for pound than they are when that's what they do? And you were just like, well, because I did one thing and I did it like every day for 4 years. It's like, yeah, that'll be it then. You pick one thing. Like you say, it's like people, I want to run a marathon, I want a 300 kilo deadlift, and I want to, I don't know, I want to be able to swim the channel or something. It's like, okay, pick one. I love that.
There's a
Well,
cool
see,
challenge I've heard. I don't know if it was Eric Bugenhagen or someone like that. And if I'm getting it right, I think it probably does sound about right. So Michael was saying, wouldn't it be cool to have your time for running a mile to be the same as your deadlift in pounds? So like 6 minute mile, 600 pound deadlift. That'd be kind of
oh,
cool.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I'd have to have a fucking massive deadlift.
1,000 pound deadlift, yeah.
Yeah, but I could just walk. It'd be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, that's great. No, because I remember, yeah, because you said when we spoke at the dinner day, you said you did used to, like you say, train with barbells and train all different ways, and then you just went, like you say, went all in on the stone lifting, and also very specifically, like you said, went all in on the stone to shoulder. Yeah. So that's so. But would you? I mean, I'm just thinking like more like comparing it to conventional training. If you wanted to get like say 180 kilo stone to shoulder, would it equate that you'd want to be able to lift maybe just to lap something that may be like say 200, 210 or so, so do you know what I mean? Would you want to be able to be a lot stronger off the floor to get it to lap than, and then it makes the slight, I mean, it's still bloody heavy, but the slightly lighter stones easier to get to shoulder? Does it work like that, or do you just work one stone from the floor to shoulder and just gradually get that stronger, that whole movement?
Yeah, that's generally how I would have done it. Like for example, my best stone to lap, I believe, is 195,
Okay.
which I then took to chest. So it's yeah, what I can generally lap, I'll be able to shoulder, which is a bit weird. I suppose that sounds a bit strange, doesn't really make much sense, but yeah, I mean, and again, the guys in Basque Country, they're the same. I mean, the Basque, sitting down for this, the Basque world record. Now, these are very uniform, like
They're kind of square,
rectangular.
like rectangle. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
rectangular, aren't
and
they?
they've
Yeah.
got like grip. They're basically, if you crossed a stone with a barbell, the uniformity of a barbell, the grip of a barbell, cross that with a stone, and it's perfectly uniform, perfectly distributed weight. It's got the handles, but anyway, it's still mind-boggling because the world record is 329 kilos to shoulder.
Wow.
But that'll be the same weight that guy can lap.
Yeah.
He won't be able to lap, but probably much more than that, because what's the point? You shoulder it if you're training for that one thing. So I don't do a huge amount of like overload, which maybe I'm missing a trick. I've actually been thinking about it recently. Maybe I'm missing a trick in that maybe I should be doing more plate lifts like I used to, and try and get like, I don't know, like a quarter ton to lap, something like that, or use a strap, because that's a hugely underrated thing that nobody's really doing that I know of. And you can buy like straps, and they tend to do it more in like India and places like that. Pakistan, they'll use like the strap around the stone rather than just relying on like clasping or like gripping. And stone lifters must be leaving a huge amount on the table not using that, because if you were to train for like a deadlift and not use straps, well, you're limited by your grip strength, so you're leaving a lot on the table, I think. So that's a completely untapped dimension as far as I know at the moment.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking, just from a conventional kind of training perspective. You'd think that, if most people can, although it's a similar movement pattern, they might be able to say deadlift, like, I don't know, say 250, 300 kilos. But then obviously you'd clean a lot less than that generally, but you build the deadlift up at that low portion. So then the actual, the clean, obviously the weight is kind of that much lighter compared to what you can break the floor with. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know if Pete was just going to mention, were you going to mention about the way that the disabled strongmen lift the Atlas stones?
I wasn't, no, but I was like, the strap thing makes sense, because I was just thinking with what Andy said, like, if you can lap it, you can shoulder it, but you can, because you're getting used to having it above your nipple line, shall we say. Whereas most people, like you were saying, most people don't. So they can lap heavy weights, but then they can't get it to their shoulder. But if you get used to that, then I don't suppose it makes that much difference. But presumably you'd use less energy if breaking it off the floor was easier. So putting a strap around a really heavy stone makes sense, like you say, like akin to the deadlift. But in the disabled strongman, we're actually there this weekend. There's a guy called Mark Tonner who he's got the use of one arm. He was in the military, and one of his arms doesn't work anymore, so he basically does everything with one. He does he does snatches and like cleans and jerks with a barbell with one arm. It's amazing to watch. He has to pick it up, get the center of gravity on it, and then he just like whacks straight above his head. It's brilliant. But he developed this strap for the stones where they tie it to one arm, tie it all the way around, and then he uses his good arm to pull it round the stone, and then they can pick them up and put them on as if they're using both arms. There's him and Erin who do it as well.
Yeah, I think I've seen that. And is that the guy that's doing like 170 kilo stones?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's doing like big stones. Yeah, I've seen him. It's amazing.
Yeah, because it's almost like, it looks almost like a fabric agility ladder, you know, that's a sling. So you roll the stone onto it and you can pull it really tight, and then you just, you know, lift it up. But that sounds similar to, you know, like I said, that's what I was thinking, because we're at the Britain's Disabled Strongman this weekend, aren't we? So we'll see them doing that this weekend. But yeah, it sounds almost like that. Yeah, so you could, yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because like you say, you're almost pioneering now where you're at. There's no one else really, or very few people anywhere near where you're at. So you're kind of now going to be pioneering ways to take it even further, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose that's kind of, as I say, obviously the Basque guys know what they're doing, but I don't have any like sort of book or resource to go from, so I'm just kind of making it up, and that's something that's really, you know, had the light
That's why you
bulb
need to
moment.
write one.
Yeah, well,
but this is what James is just saying. I think you'll be the guy in like another 5 or 6 years or whatever. You know, it'll be like, well, I was right. Like David Keown's written a book, like, you know, he's doing about the Irish Stones. He's gone and found them all, so it's his thing. So this will be your thing, won't it? To me, I love it. You know, so it'll be like for all the little guys out there who are a mere 6 foot tall, they'll be able to lift them bigger.
Yeah, I just need to kind of commit to it and find time, because I've got a lot of requests for like training programs and things like that, and I just really don't have the time with the 2 jobs and then all the rest of it. I need to try and find time to actually sit down and do that eventually.
So how much time do you mentioned time there? We'd, like you say, half of your time spent in a school, half of your time spent at the university. How many times a week, or how much training do you do a week for yourself to get to kind of the level that you're at?
So slowly but surely I've had to taper it off. So I used to do like 3 or 4 days a week when the weights were lighter. But now that, to put things into perspective, I warm up with 104 sandbag. That's like my lightest weight. And then it will be quickly into like 116 sandbag. And then my lightest Atlas stone I've got now is 130 kilo. Lightest natural stone I'll start with like 118, you know, and but if you rewind the clock back, those would have been like almost top weights, like 118 kilo natural stone would have been like pretty much top weight 4 years ago. So I could train a lot more. So I've had to strip that back to 2 days a week to allow for the recovery to be optimal. So usually I'll train something like a Monday, Friday, or a Tuesday, Saturday, or something like that.
So you try and have that kind of, like you say, three or 4 days rest in between. And I'd imagine, do they still like scratch up your body? Do you still get like, or is your whole body kind of calloused now? Because I know a lot of what you lift is, you know, you lift obviously with your top off, because I think that's because, so the stone, you know, you actually get a stick, do you, on the skin and the stone, rather than...
It's certainly not to show off the physique. No, it's what physique, you know. It's basically it's to get feedback. You'll see that from a lot of the guys. They'll go topless for like the big lifts, because you get a lot more feedback from the stone when it's like next to your skin. And of course, like with a t-shirt, even with the best will in the world, if you don't quite get the enough pressure, you'll get even like that, just that tiny amount of drop, and that can scupper your lift. So yeah.
So but in terms of like, because I've never done natural stones, but I've done the Atlas stones, and when I do like a session on those, because I don't do it very often, but when we do, and I know that everything you do is tackless, isn't it? You don't use any tacky for anything, as far as I'm aware.
Only when I get to 164 kilo Atlas stone. When I get to that point, that I'll throw in a little bit of the lightest grade tacky, or use tacky spray when I get to that point. But everything up until the 164 kilo Atlas stones tackless.
Yeah. So but when I've done it, I always get, you know, like the inside, the forearms are all, you know, like scuffed up for days afterwards. But are you? That's what I mean by being callous to it. Are you? And the natural, I mean, do you still kind of, your body get roughed up and scratched up, or are you fairly immune to that now?
Yeah, pretty much immune to it now after 4 years. So it's like my forearms are like, you know, dragon scales. They're like horrible. Like I used to, same as you, I used to get like all bruised.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, I did the 164 for a double for the first time because I'm training for the 180 kilo Atlas stone to shoulder, and did that just a few days ago, and it's absolutely perfect. Like there's nothing there, just used
Must
to.
be good for like when you're painting and decorating the side of the walls and that. You're just like, I'll just
just rub the arm, I guess. Yeah.
There you go, sorted.
Yeah.
So because the heaviest Atlas stone, I think, is it still 174 that you've shouldered?
Yeah, so there's a big disparity between
173 or 173 maybe.
173, yeah. There's a big disparity between my sandbag, my natural stone, and then my Atlas stones lag behind, and that is simply because you can't bump Atlas stones. That's where true, like absolute monstrous raw strength can get you through. Because if you can get that momentum from lap with the Atlas stone and get it to roll, it can roll up further. So my sandbag's 194 to shoulder, natural stone 192, and then it's a drop to 173 for the Atlas stone. But I've just recently got my brand new Atlas Endurance, beautiful thing, work of art, 180 kilo stone. Made. It's in the garage, and I'm feeling good. Just doubled the 164 quite easily. It wasn't as difficult as I thought. In fact, as I said, I could have probably worried a third rep. Could have probably maybe get it for a triple. I mean, I think for sure I could have doubled it to shoulder and then got it to like high chest again. So I think I'm pretty close to the 180, and I'll hopefully have that before the end of the year. And then that's it. I don't think I'll push much past that, because the next jump up, there's not that many 190 kilo Atlas stones going around, because the next jump would then be 200, and I don't know if that's within my capabilities. We'll see. I don't know.
I think as well with because the Atlas is the Atlas Endurance one you've got, like the almost like the granite looking one that's the same sort of color as my t-shirt. Is it like that, the Atlas Endurance one, or?
Oh no, this is just like the ones you'd get in like strongman competitions, just that perfectly round, and it's their custom sort of black.
Oh yeah,
Atlas
but I've
stone.
seen them. The Atlas Endurance ones are almost like huge marbles. Some of them they're really beautifully made. Is it? Like
there's lots of different colours and things like that. But I just went for their standard now is these kind of black Atlas stones.
Yeah.
But as you know, I'm the proud owner of the heaviest dragon egg stone in the world, because they've started making these. They either call them dragon eggs, dragon stones, or Basque stones. And they've been recently in all the ultimates, and I think it was England's strongest.
Yeah, because I was at the UK's, the Ultimates UK's, and they did one of those to shoulder. And Chris Beetham was there doing it, and and Andy Flynn. Who makes those dragon egg ones then?
That's Atlas Endurance as well. So the
yeah.
heaviest ones in existence up until that point were the 140s that they were shouldering at the England's and the I don't know if it was just it was Scotland's, England's, and then it was the Welsh as well. Yes. Yeah. So the heaviest ones there were 140. So I was like, oh, I need to get myself one of those, but I want the world's heaviest one. And Liam Brown has a 162. Yeah. There was a kind of, I think it was a dud that Stephen had accidentally made too heavy. So Liam bought that. So I was like, I'll have to get one made, because that would have done me. So I said, right, let's get one that's around about 170, and he got it 170 on the nose, and that's currently the world's heaviest one, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, they're quite interesting, aren't they? Because they actually look like a sort of a dappled sort of eggshell on them as well, don't they? They're like you say, they're dragon egg. Because I suppose the thing with the Atlas stones is the bigger they get generally. I mean, like you say, you're a shade under 6 foot maybe, but as the stones, the diameter and the circumference gets bigger, you just can't get the hands round, can you? And if you're going up to like a 200 kilo stone, because I know that obviously I can't remember what's the world record for the. I think Tom Stoltman might have it still for the Atlas stone to platform. Is it as much as 300 or something?
It's like I could be wrong. Don't quote me. It's like a shade over 280. I think it's like 283. I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Something like that.
But I mean, he's obviously like the albatross. Got the huge wingspan. But to get the hands around the Atlas stone is where the challenge is going to come in, isn't it?
Yeah,
so these stones, like the 192 one, the long one that you've got that I've seen lift, and then I think you said you have the heaviest end at the top, do you? So it goes over the shoulder, or the heaviest end at the bottom? Yeah, heaviest end at the top. So where do you find? Do you just go and find something like that and then bring it home? Yeah,
just find them in waste piles. Generally, farmers have like chucked these to the side of their fields. And then all we do is go and knock the farmer's door and go, see that big horrible pile of stones at the side of your field? can I get one? And they're usually okay about it. Funny story though, apparently Jamie Gorian, when he was collecting his stones for his comp, he went to one of these waste piles and we started taking one. The farmer came zooming around the corner and was like, stop stealing my stones. So that was pretty funny. But no, generally that's where I get them, just waste piles plowed to the side of fields.
You'll be able to walk up in future and knock on the door and go, I'm world famous stone lifter Andy Crawford, by the way. I'm taking one of those stones. And they go, yes, of course you can.
That would be good.
And then how do you actually, I mean, I've seen you weigh them as well, but what's the process of, how do you get home like 190 kilo stone? Do you go with a friend or something and load it in the back of a truck and yeah?
With great difficulty, and we've got this. If I ever do write the book, I'll put this in the book because we've got it down to an absolute fine art. And believe it or not, all these stones, apart from one or two, have gone in the back of a Fiesta.
Right. Okay.
and the Fiesta's fine because you look up the payload of a Fiesta, and as we always say jokingly, it's the equivalent of having Tom Stoltman in your boot.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
But I always find the hardest thing then is getting it out the boot, isn't it?
Massive. That 192 was the hardest thing to get out because it's so flat and because it's just like a Fiesta and you get you've got the drop with the lip of the boot. Because if it was like a normal car, you could not a normal car, but like an estate or something, you could slide it a little bit more. But because it dropped in, we really struggled to get it back out again. But we've got a good process going, so normally it's quite slick.
Yeah, and then in terms of weighing it, because I've seen you weigh these in your garage as well, and you've got some kind of sling sort of set up and almost like I know it's a lot more heavy duty than this, but like the kind of the scales you get to weigh your luggage or something that you pick it up or a fish or something, you pick it up and it gives you the readout. You've got something like that, have you use?
Yeah, so I invested in that when I started taking it seriously because I like to know what I'm lifting so as I can roughly program what I want to do and roughly work out how much volume I'm doing in terms of kilos in a session, that type of thing. So I bought myself like a chain block hoist and then one of those crane scales they call it, which is rated to 300 kilos. And then it's just a case of getting the stone, ratchet strap it, hook it in, and up it goes in the chain hoist. And so then I know exactly what I'm lifting. And it's also quite handy for the naysayers because there's a lot of naysayers that are like, fake rock, it's styrofoam, yeah, right, mate. And it's just like, well, there's the video of me weighing it. So
I never understand that. I mean, why people would say that you were faking it, or why anyone would fake it. I know that I'm sure people do but it's kind of like there's no benefit to it, is there? I suppose there is, but do you know what I mean? I just don't really understand why people would want to fake a lift or accuse someone of faking a lift. But I suppose there are people out there doing it. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not about big views and exposure and all that. It's nice to get recognition, but believe it or not, that's the video that did the best on YouTube. Was one of the ones where I shouldered a 147 kilo stone quite easily. Really quite easily, and everybody was like, "It's not that way. It's such a liar." And it was just this rage bait. And I'm like, maybe I should do this a lot more. Just shoulder a stone and claim it's 200, and then people will just go bananas, and that'll get me, better reach. Who knows?
Oh dear. And you said though that you've still got some goals that you're what I was going to ask as well about the sandbag, because I showed someone you lifting that Cerberus and it's 194, I think.
Yeah.
And someone said they can't sell many of them that size, the sandbags from Cerberus, because that must be the biggest that they do. Because the heaviest sandbag I've got at the gym is, I might have 120. I've not lifted it, but I might have 120 there. But yeah, the 194 bag is huge, isn't it? Yeah. How do you find I mean, do you use sandbags as a lifting tool in and of itself, or do you use the sandbag to kind of train for the stone lifting? Do you know what I mean?
Because I'm so limited with my space, I would love to have this perfect set of accessible natural stones going from 100 up to just under 200. And then I'd love the full set of Cerberus sandbags. I'm fully sponsored. I could ask for them, but I can't. I just don't have space. And then same with Atlas stones. I'd love 100 up to 200 set, just don't have space. So just necessity is the mother of invention. So basically, I have to use natural stones, sandbags, and Atlas stones in my warm-ups each session, because I just don't have space for everything else. And I think that's one of the accidental keys to my training, is because I'm training all aspects all the time. So it's not as if I'm doing like a block of only, I might do a block of only sandbag in terms of my heavy working sets, or Atlas stones or natural stones. But before I do that top set or sets, I'm working my way up through the weights of the round sandbag. Then I'm going on to the normal sandbag, 116. Then I'm going to a natural stone that's 122. And I'm working my way up through that as my warm-ups, but I'm hitting all the different like objects in my warm-ups. And I think that's what's key, because that must be just hitting everything.
Yeah. And how do you, sorry, go on, Pete.
That sounds like another, like you say, you're dropping your secrets here, by the way. So anyone who's listening is going to be like, all of a sudden, all these people will be up to your level, because like saying keeping it above chest level, and then that as well. Because I mean, I bet you there's like people who want to lift Atlas stones. So all the lift is Atlas stones, and it's like, do you become better at lifting Atlas stones if you lift the natural stones, because it's there, it feels easier. Because it's all about like central nervous system perception as well, isn't it? I suppose, of like, well, that felt easier than that. So if you're going through sandbags, natural stones, graded, not graded,
dragon egg as well.
Yeah, dragon egg as well. But you know, like uniform stones, it's like, yeah, it must just be, it must just be like going along like I can lift anything. So, you know, you never know, you might get better than the bass lifters then, because theirs are all uniform. So
yeah, well, that's the thing. I would love one of those bass guys that's like, you know, lifting 250 plus kilo perfect cube things. I'd love to see how they would do on the likes of my very, very unbalanced, almost triangle shaped 192. It'd be fascinating to see how they would get on, because even when they do lift natural stones, they tend to be like quite round or like very like egg shaped, you know, very uniform. You don't tend to see them doing completely odd object lifting, which would be
so
something.
Do they not have like, do they not come over to Scotland and have a go and all of that sort of stuff? Does it not happen?
No, not that I can see. I mean, there's been a few likes of Ryan Stewart, and there's been a few other folk from likes of America and Canada and so on. I think a couple of British guys have gone over to Basque Country, and it's almost going into like a secret lost tribe, lost society type of thing, because we just don't get much information, and those that do get the information are kind of inside that inner circle. Like Ryan, he'll get a lot of information, a lot of things sent to him from the Basque guys, because he's been over on that kind of pilgrimage. But in terms of mainstream stuff, you've got the Rogue documentary. That's the only one I've seen that's a sort of major output from the Basque Country, so that's quite secretive.
Yeah, because obviously you get people go over to like Iceland, don't they, and do the stone tours, and now come up to Scotland and do the stone tours, and go to Ireland now. So then maybe that's something that might develop over time. I don't know. Or maybe, like you say, it's a culture where they don't necessarily want to share and want everybody coming over.
Or maybe they are all polystyrene, and they just don't want anyone to know.
I suppose the other thing is that it doesn't have the same kind of aspect to it in terms of the travel, because you'd be going over there to a village, to like a warehouse or a gym, a very rustic gym, and you'd be just in a building lifting these, or you know, these kind of like different cylinders and cubes, concrete cubes, and the rectangles, and you're like, geez, I've traveled all this way to go to a gym, you know. Whereas you don't get to do the touring around and seeing the countryside like you do with the Icelandic stones and the Scottish stones.
Yeah. And I was going to ask as well, in terms of, you mentioned that new fairly new, the Cerberus, the kind of the Atlas stone sandbag, the round one. How do you find that? Because I've never used one of those yet. Are they? I know it's another thing, but do you like lifting those?
Yeah, so those things are amazing. For me, at least, all aspects of the lift are more difficult. Like, what I'm comparing it to is tackied Atlas stones. So if we compare tacky Atlas stones to the sandstone bags, the only bit that I find easier is the pickup, because you can really dig your fingers and really get a grip, make your little groove in the bag. And lift it up. All other aspects, especially the shoulder, are more difficult pound for pound. So if you wanted to be training for like a comp where you're doing Atlas stones, I'd highly recommend using them, because especially if it's to shoulder, because they are so much more difficult. Like my PB, they only make them up to 140 kilos, and the 140 kilos is absolutely massive. And we overloaded it with some weight plates, and my PB is 153. And I think I've got 160 in me just now, but in terms of anything more than that, that'd be really, really tough. And if you compare that to like the 194 sandbag, that's like a 34 kilo difference. So it just shows you how hard those things are to shoulder. Hugely difficult. It's a great training tool.
Do you have to really fill them quite well so they're really stuffed? So they are pretty solid when they're full, yeah?
Oh geez, if you wanted to intentionally, because I've got a bag that's intentionally underfilled, it's got two 5 kilo dumbbells in it instead, and it's intentionally like that, so it's so much more difficult, and it's flops around and all the rest of it, takes your power, doesn't roll nicely, and you could intentionally do that to make the lift more difficult. But if you wanted to make it a bit more stone light, then hard pack it.
Yeah, wow. No, that's fantastic. Well, so what is next then for you? What is the next challenge that you're training for, or what is, what are you going for next then?
So the last thing on the list is the 180 kilo Atlas stone to shoulder, and then after that there is still a side quest, and I've had to reduce it to a side quest because it's the cricket stone down in Wales, and I've been twice now, and the first time I can't really make too many excuses other than it was a learning curve. It was a learning session, and as we talk about the real estate on our arms, you've only got so much skin you can devote to each learning session. So after about 6 or 7 lifts on a 177.5 kilo stone, you've learned something. You've been like, I haven't been doing it quite right, but I've got no more skin left to kind of try again, because I'm now almost bleeding, so I need to stop. So there's that stone, but it's
you'd be shouldering that one.
Yeah, I'd love to be the second guy in history to shoulder that, but it's the setup, because you have to. Well, for me, I have to drive nearly 9 hours to get there. It's then you can't, and this is how I love to do it. I'd love to just spend 4 or 5 hours just playing about with it myself, just learning it with my music on, just in the zone, puzzling it out, like you said earlier. But you don't get that because, and that's nobody's fault. Like I'm not Steve Barr, the guy who looks after it, is just the greatest guy, lovely guy, passionate. But just because it sits in the middle of the town, and you can't just have it lying there because people would come and roll it about, or drunks would try and lift it. So he adjudicates and watches you lift it, and so you're on a bit of a time limit. And it's just the kind of pressure of that after you've driven 9 hours, and you're like, I've only got a limited amount of time and all that, and just it's very difficult for me mentally to get around that. So I've had to reduce. That was my main goal, but I've had to reduce that to a side quest now because it's just not working for me, the setup. So it will be the 180 Atlas stone, and then I would like to, after that, change it up a little bit, and I want to do a 300 kilo deficit deadlift, beltless hook grip. That'd be nice.
Wow! And what would the deficit be? Would you be on like a plate or something, or
just
like a couple of an inch and a half or something?
2-inch deficit. Yeah, that'd be nice. Because I tested my deadlift recently just to see where I was at, and I did that lift 280 kilos. That's without any barbell training, which is fascinating. So, like for your listeners, it's absolutely fascinating how much strength you can build from stones and bags that then translates to the barbell lifts. And from what I've seen of, unless you're talking about like absolute beasts, I think there's a lot more potential for carryover from the stones and the bags to the barbell lifts rather than the barbell lifts to the stones and bags, just because of the specificity of grip and so on and so forth. So those are only 2 goals really. Major goal left, but we'll see how we get on. I don't know.
Fantastic. Have you ever done or wanted to do something like the Husafell stone in Iceland or anything like that? I know that probably wouldn't be very challenging for you actually to get it to chest anyway, because it's around 170 kilos, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, about that. Yeah,
and then it's just obviously the walking it round as far as you can and stuff. But
I mean, I'd like to tick that off one day, but I'm not in like a major hurry,
because that's probably something you could do without any specific training, isn't it? To be honest, you could probably just go along and pick it up. Well, certainly pick it up. It just depends how far you carry it, I suppose.
I'd probably need to do like a little bit of prep, a little sort of 10-week lead in or something like that. Training front carries again. But I've done a 160 kilo sandbag, which is probably more challenging, just because I grip. That's like one of the round sandbags, not the Husafel. And I've done that for about 30 meters. So yeah, should be okay if I ever do go over.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to get yourself to Wales and spend the night before, wouldn't you? I suppose, and you know, then you get a good night's sleep and rock up and do it like that, I think.
So I'll play my tiny violin. That is what I did.
At
the start of the summer, but it was right in the middle of that blooming heat wave, so it was like 26 degrees.
Yeah,
and I was putting on the chalk and I was sweating through the chalk. And then again, no disrespect to Steve, but it was the only time I could come down because of other plans. So it was midweek during the school holidays, and he could only come and open it up for an hour on his lunch.
Yeah.
So he was eating a Scotch egg, munching into a Scotch egg, you know, in his work gear. And amazing for giving up his time. So, you know, thanks to him. But it was just that kind of sweating. Okay, I've got an hour. He's eating a Scotch egg. I need to get this done. I've come all this way. Head was gone before I even started. And my other half, she was like, yeah, you weren't lifting that from the start. Like, even if you could have, you weren't doing it because your head was gone because you had all these things messing around. So I've had to just cut my losses. I've achieved a lot. That's a side quest. That might happen. I think I'll probably meet up with, you know, Travel Lift Stones Repeat guy, John.
Yeah.
I'll probably meet up with him next summer and maybe give it one more bash because he's coming over to lift it. So we'll see how that goes.
Excellent. Well, we'll be talking to Wales, we'll be seeing Matt Diamond at the weekend, won't we, Pete?
We will.
He was doing the egg stone, the Cerberus egg to shoulder. I saw him at the UK. So yeah, we'll have a little chat with him when we see him at the weekend as well. So that'll be good. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us. I mean, I know how busy you are because, like you said, we got this in, and you said, well, I've got a little bit of flexibility certain days. So thank you so much. So just to remind everyone, do go. I mean, is Instagram your main place where you post most stuff? Yeah.
That's my main place. I've got same handle, Crawford of 24. I've got that on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then Liam Brown started convincing me to post on Reddit because apparently people want to see stuff there as well. So I started putting the odd thing on Reddit. But those are the main ones. I've stayed away from TikTok. People are like, oh, you should put stuff on TikTok. But all I see every day is kids that are completely and utterly addicted to that thing. So I'm just like, no, I'm not going to need it. So that'll do me. I've got Instagram and YouTube mainly, and it's Crawford of 24.
Excellent. Yeah. So Crawford Crawford of 24 on Instagram and not TikTok. YouTube. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not yet. Don't go looking on TikTok because he won't be there. Yeah.
Cerberus post some of my stuff there, but yeah, I haven't gone there yet.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. That was really great. And yes, hopefully that's inspired some of you to try, you know, sandbag lifting. Do be very careful. I'll say that. We'll put that out as a kind of a bit of a what would you call it, a warning or whatever. Don't try this at home. Don't try what Andy does at home straight away. But yeah, anything like, you know, stone lifting, sandbag lifting, but just obviously, like everything, start very, very light and watch how the best guys in the world do it. And Andy is certainly one of those guys.
I've got some of the guys at the moment who are training for stone to shoulder, and they're like, how do you get it to flick up like that? And I'm like, you're too upright. And I said, just literally go down to a 5 or 10 kilo plate, put it on your chest, and just balance it there, and just feel that position where you're using your torso as a ramp, and just practice with that. So like starting off 10 kilo plate on your chest, and then shoulder that. You know, there's no harm in doing that, and then just slowly work your way up. When I first made my first Frankenstone, which was a Pilates ball filled with gravel, and then duct tape the heck out of it. I think that was about 80 kilos. So that's where I started, you know, and just worked up from there.
Excellent. I might try some of this. You might see, Pete, you might see me doing some stuff with some light sandbags and plates and things. Doing me. Right.
I can't wait.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andy. That was absolutely brilliant. And thank you to everybody for watching and listening. We will be back next week. I think it's either next week or the week after. We're going to have Dan John back with us talking about his newest book, The Art of Coaching. But we will be back next week for episode 266. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're watching or listening on a platform that allows you to do so, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts. We're trying to get our reviews up on there. And hopefully we'll see you again at some stage, Andy. I know that Pete's going to be up at the Dinny Day again next year. I won't be there next year, but are you going to be are you going to go up to the Rogue Invitational? Are you going to have a look at that? Because that's not far from you, is it?
Yeah, I'm going to pop along to that. Yeah, it would be crazy not to, because it's just on my doorstep, and it's one of the big four, isn't it? One of the big four comps in strongman. So
yeah,
it's literally 40 minutes away. So yeah, I'll pop into that at least one of the days. Probably pop in on Saturday to see the final of the strongman, because I was there last year and it was awesome. So that'll be good.
Yeah, because we also had John Gibb we had on as well, and he was there last year, wasn't
That's
he?
right.
And when I stayed, because that P&J arena or stadium, it's just near Aberdeen Airport, isn't it? So yeah, like you say, it's really handy to get to. So no, that's fantastic, brilliant. Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Pete. Pete, I'm going to see you in a couple of days' time.
You are
in London for the disabled Britain's disabled strongman and strongwoman. Yeah, because Gary Clark as well, don't you, Andy?
Oh yeah, I forgot to say about him just very quickly. Yeah, so Gary's coming up in our next sort of month or so, because as far as we know, we haven't had an adapted athlete, in sort of the wheelchair setup, lifting any of the historic stones yet that I know of. There might be, I don't know, but he likes to pioneer, so he wants to come up and do some stone lifting. So he's going to come here first. I've got my set of stones, so that's from 45 kilo up to 100. Bang on, and that's the Clark stones, and we'll maybe get that on a pallet down to him. But he's going to come and lift them, natural stones, and he wants to be the first adapted athlete to get like 100 kilo stone to shoulder. So that'd be really, really cool. And then I'll take him and have a practice getting him out to some of our sites around Aberdeenshire, because we've started placing like smaller stones next to the big stones, so he'll be able to do like the 60s and the 70s maybe, and give that a shot. So that's going to be really cool and make some history.
Yeah. Oh, he's a lovely guy, isn't he? And I see him training in his garden. He's doing the stones to shoulder in his chair and everything. And we'll obviously be with him all weekend. So no, I wanted to say hello from him to you, and to give him a little shout out as well, because he's a great guy. And we'll be spending the weekend with him. So brilliant, excellent. Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. We will see you next week for episode 266. Until then, bye-bye.